as the WWF continued to push the envelope to new heights, leading to Vince McMahon shooting back at the growing focus of the media on the TV product due to the younger demographics' viewership skyrocketing on Raw. WCW were forced to not only not attempt to match it, but tone down further due to Turner standards and practices restrictions, with Eric Bischoff as the company president distancing WCW from the WWF product in several media interviews during the week, with one of the topics coming up being Scott Steiner's character and promos. Steiner, who became one of the top-rating draws in the business over the last 6 months with a mixture of aggressively comedic edgy promos, was asked by Eric to tone down his act and drop some of the catchphrases he got over in the last few months. Steiner with Bagwell opened the show for his first promo since the Eric story, noticeably dropping some of his usual references and crowd interaction, with him and Bagwell challenging Goldberg and Rick Steiner to set up a tag main event for later tonight. Nitro's rest of the first hour saw Luger and Nash calling Mysterio on the phone to offer him a place in the group and a Wolfpack shirt, a Kidman vs. Psychosis match going 13 minutes, and Arn Anderson confronting David Flair about him turning on Rick to join the NWO, as David told him that the Horsemen are the past, with Anderson warning him that when he walks out the door David is now another NWO member. While the WWF is on the hottest run of any company in history, WCW continued to do peak business in every department after news came out of the Super Brawl pay-per-view drawing the company's third biggest show in history, while also having a huge week on the road with 2 house shows headlined by Goldberg vs. Bigelow in San Antonio and Greenville drawing a combined attendance of over 30,000 people. After feuding with the Wolfpack in the last month and getting the highest profile win of his career last week against Nash, Mysterio, after taking off his mask, continued to be placed in the main TV time slots, with Ray vs. Bigelow crossing over the top of the hour to the first head-to-head quarter, going 9 minutes, with Ray going over to continue his streak. The full corporation opened Raw, coming after a week of Vince McMahon all over the media talking about the booming WWF product and whether the company market to children, as with the WWF pushing the creative envelope further than any company at any point in history. Raw's viewership shot up in every demographic, including over 2 million viewers under 18. Vince talked about Undertaker's message from last week before blaming Kane for losing, kicking him out of the corporation and about to send him back to the asylum before Chyna asked to give him one more chance, setting up a Kane vs. Austin main event with both Kane and Chyna fired if Kane doesn't win, along with a Taker vs. Mankind match, as Raw opened huge with an all-time record 6.4 rating, by far the highest opener in history. McMahon's most talked about appearance came on a high-profile piece on Inside Edition, aggressively going face-to-face with the interviewer and confronting him on every point made regarding how they market the product to every demographic. While knowing that the show was gonna try to push their agenda, McMahon brought his own crew to get the full transcript of the interview, where Vince goes after him even more about the show not doing their homework and trying to mask the facts with their editing. McMahon then sent a letter to the New York Daily News calling the critics geeks with no sense of humor, saying that 70% of their audience is over 18 years old and the only focus group they take seriously are the audience that made them #1 in the TV charts and pack the buildings for WWF shows every week. Next on Nitro was Ernest Miller being called out by Jerry Flynn, going 8 minutes, while Raw had a three-way match for the IC title between Shamrock, Val and Goldust, continuing the Triangle program heading into WrestleMania with Billy Gunn out of the match after not being cleared to wrestle, going 4 minutes before interfering for the finish, as the announcers continued to hype a loaded-up second hour with 3 major matches of Rock vs. Road Dogg for the title, Taker vs. Mankind and Austin vs. Kane coming up. With the company hyping his return prior to the show, Jim Ross, who for the last few months was backstage helping Michael Cole do play-by-play through the headset, made his TV return to a big ovation. JR, who still didn't fully recover from Bell's palsy, called out Bart Gunn before changing his tone, saying that a lot of people seem to have trouble looking at his face these days, and that the company promised him to get his job back when he's ready, which didn't happen because they didn't want his face on television. JR then brought up Bart Gunn's talked about Brawl For All fight with Steve Williams, playing off the legit story in the company being that everyone wanted Gunn to win just because JR was so arrogantly predicting Williams to run through the tournament. JR said that it was a lucky punch before slapping Gunn to turn heel and bring out Williams for the save, with this segment bumping Raw back into record territory with over 400,000 viewers to a 6.4. Next on Nitro was Bret Hart vs. Chris Benoit, a match announced on the spot during the second hour, going way longer than usual with close to 20 minutes and a rare TV match going into a commercial break over 2 quarters. Raw meanwhile continued to break new milestones, having DX vs. Owen and Jarrett going 5 minutes for the tag belts with the hook of Debra in a robe at ringside. Minutes later, Luna came out to call out Sable, who went to the next level as a TV draw since coming back from the Playboy Media Tour, leading to Raw breaking its all-time quarter-hour record with a 6.6 rating. The second half of Bret vs. Benoit continued into the top of the hour quarter, giving Nitro its first viewership boost of the night, picking up over 500,000 viewers into the 4 rating range. Rock vs. Road Dogg for the title opened Raw's second hour, going 4 minutes with Rock going over to retain 4 weeks from WrestleMania. Raw, coming from the Gund Arena in Cleveland, sold out the building with over 17,000 people, while Nitro, coming from the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill, drew a sellout 19,000, combining for a huge audience in the buildings and on TV. With another booming department in pay-per-view buys seeing one of its biggest head-to-head battles in history between the companies in February 1999, as preliminary numbers for both the Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view headlined by the first Austin vs. McMahon match and Rock vs. Mankind for the WWF title, and WCW Super Brawl headlined by Hogan vs. Flair, in addition to a loaded star power card, came out with both events neck and neck, each drawing around 450,000 domestic buys, making it one of the biggest ever months for the industry on pay-per-view, with both companies since the start of '99 already drawing over 2 million domestic buys. The Wolfpack with Hollywood Hogan came out for his first follow-up promo after going over Ric Flair with David's interference and him joining the NWO at Super Brawl, putting over David for making the right decision while taking shots at Flair, telling him to do the right thing and announce his retirement tonight. The Wolfpack Hogan promo segment, which included Vincent and Stevie Ray fighting after Nash and Hogan played them against each other, drew WCW's peak rating of the night with a 4.3 rating. Raw had multiple angles in the next 15 minutes, first with Public Enemy calling out the Brood, and Droz vs Blackman in a kendo stick match, while in the background throughout Bob Holly Road Dogg and Al Snow, who took the hardcore division to the next level in the last 2 months with some of the wildest matches in history, brawled all over the building until ending up in the street. After heavily hyping his promo throughout the show as him perhaps announcing his retirement, Ric Flair came out just before the main event talking about David turning heel on him to join the NWO before turning to Hogan. Flair said that he's still the president of WCW for 28 more days, looking 2 weeks ahead to the uncensored pay-per-view, saying that he's having a 15-feet-high cage built for the show with no doors surrounded with barbed wire at the top, while subtly promoting a violent match with him and Hogan going old school with only one walking out. While the Flair promo was going on, Vince McMahon came out on Raw for commentary on the Taker vs Mankind match with Foley's spot as the second referee for the main event on the line, announcing Taker vs Bossman in a Hell in a Cell match for WrestleMania before hinting at another major announcement to be revealed later in the show. While usually a hype trick, Flair promo is one of the biggest guarantees in the business for a viewership spike, a rare occurrence on the night. Going head-to-head with the McMahon-Mankind Taker match on Raw, saw WCW drop to a 3.8 rating, while at the same time Raw jumped over 900,000 viewers from a 5.7 to 6.4. Nitro's final quarter saw the entrances and first half of the Goldberg and Rick vs Scott and Bagwell main event, with Bagwell making his in-ring return for the first time in almost a year since his near-career-ending injury from a Rick Steiner top rope bulldog last April, while Rick himself was making his return from injury after months out. The tag match went 11 minutes with the crowd, as it did last week, popping huge for Goldberg vs Steiner, including a memorable spot with Goldberg press slamming the over 280-pound Steiner for reps to a massive reaction. After arriving an hour and a half earlier, Steve Austin made his first appearances on the night, with him and Kane coming out at 10:50 p.m. for the main event. Austin, who was on a media run over the last month with a more sporadic WWF TV schedule, worked his first TV match on a Monday night in almost 4 months since the start of December '98, going 14 minutes against Kane in the same building of their title match in June of last year. After Rock's appearance on That 70s Show sitcom drew the show's all-time record rating, Austin also had his first major acting role debuting during the weekend TV series Nash Bridges for a heavily hyped guest appearance on Friday, spiking viewership big, with the episode drawing a 9.9 rating with almost 15 million viewers, with both figures all-time records for the show. Goldberg and Rick vs Scott and Bagwell continued in the overrun against record viewership on Raw, still managed to increase its audience, jumping to a 4 rating for the conclusion of the match, ending up with Rick setting up the hot tag with Goldberg dominating to go over to close the show. At the same time, Austin vs. Kane picked up big from already near record numbers, jumping over 1.3 million viewers to a massive 7.6 rating, the highest peak recorded on a Raw broadcast in history. Raw, who exactly a year ago drew a 3.8 rating, continued its unprecedented explosion with the show almost doubling its audience in 12 months, shattering every opposed and unopposed record in cable TV history with a huge 6.3 rating.